Alright, so I do have an update today on the Range Rover for the coolant leak, which has given me issues for about the past month and a half now, give or take a couple weeks. And I had previously done an update that I'd filmed, but I never did anything with it just because it didn't really bear any fruit at the time. And it's been so long since I did that video, waiting on parts and stuff. So I'm going to kind of start over again today, since everything's back together anyways. And we're gonna tear into this thing and we're gonna get it to the front outlet coolant pipe, which is the hard plastic one. They tend to go bad on these things. And it looks like that's where our leak is coming from. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about once we start digging in. So we're gonna go ahead and pull the intake off, the intake manifold, the throttle body, and we're gonna get to that pipe. Even if it's not leaking, I'm replacing it, and then we'll move to the rear coolant pipe, but it doesn't look like it's coming from there because all the coolant is in the front side of the motor, not on the back side. So that being said, I have brand new coolant flange or coolant pipe, which I got from Lucky 8. It is a genuine Range Rover coolant pipe. I also ordered a set of intake manifold gaskets and a throttle body gasket to replace. Being that I've taken this apart so many times, I figured now would be the time to replace them, since it's hopefully going back together for good for a while. But when I pulled it apart last time, and I'll try and show you guys again, there was some oil leakage from the back end of the intake manifold, and you can see, and once again I'll show you guys, you can see where the intake manifold gaskets have been crushed so much to the point that they're no longer holding enough seal, where I think that they're kind of blowing oil through and blowing air through, so it's not creating a good vacuum in the intake system. So that would explain some of my rough idle sometimes, but also kind of the sluggish acceleration and stuff. So I think it's going to take care of a couple problems, not just one. And throttle body, the same thing. The throttle body gasket's been apart so many times, or the throttle body's been apart so many times that the gasket is most likely bad. So I'm replacing that as well, and we're just going to start fresh and hopefully solve all of these issues in one sitting. That being said, let's dig into this. Let's go ahead and get this apart. All right, first sign of a coolant leak, boom, coolant. So this is coming out on the right side of the throttle body, and yes, the pipes run, on this right side here. But if they're overflowing from this side and the belt's running, it's going to throw coolant everywhere. So I know some people are gonna be like, oh, it's your whatever it's called, your water pump. So people are gonna be like, oh, it's your water pump. But when you have something around a belt, it's gonna throw fluid all over the place, not just in one central location. And I'll show you how I know it's not the water pump and it's going to be the coolant pipe, and it's because of the coolant under the intake manifold, which the coolant from the water pump would not necessarily get to. Another thing I'm going to make note of is the little bit of oil residue we have at the bottom of where it connects to the throttle body, and there's some over here as well, and that's just another telltale sign that you have a potential leak in the gasket, and that's where oil would come from in that case. Now that our intake is out of the way, we just unscrewed all the hose clamps. We are now going to remove the PCV line that runs to the throttle body. We're going to remove the plug for the map sensor, not the actual map sensor itself. We're going to remove the plug for the throttle body. We're going to move this air line, which runs into the intake, out of the way. We're also going to pull our oil cap off, so that way we can pull this cover off and get that out of the way really quickly. We are going to have to remove this fuel line, which is 17 millimeter and 17 millimeter on this side. When you break those free, just be really careful. There is going to be fuel in there and it will be pressurized, so just break it a little bit just to get the fuel to depressurize, and then you can pull it off, and you're probably going to get some fuel everywhere. So this PCV pipe, I'm going to push down on it, crimp both sides, and pull it out, and we'll be able to get it out of the way once the fuel line's removed. There is this air thing here as well, and we're just going to pop that off. It's just 2 fingers, press here and pop off, and that connects to the back of the intake manifold. So yeah, so I'm going to break this bolt free, our gas line, and then those 2 torque bits in the back, and we'll remove our 10 millimeter bolts that run along the side of the manifold, as well as the 4 on the throttle body. All right, so we got our throttle body disconnected and you can see it's loose now. Went ahead and removed that fuel line. Make sure you cover up the holes. You do not want to get any debris as you do this into your fuel system. I went ahead and removed this torque bit, and then there's also the 2 torque bits in the back that I removed off of the intake manifold. That connects to the wiring harness and also the coolant pipe. So if you try to pull this out and yank it out while that is all connected, chances are you're gonna break something. So if it doesn't feel right, you're missing something. I should probably take my own advice sometimes, but I'm gonna show you this really quick. So this is our throttle body gasket right here, and you can see down at the bottom how it's kind of darker, looks kind of like oily. So that is probably oil leaking past that gasket, which means that gasket's about done, well, is done. So that might be part of our vacuum leak, and that is a tall tale sign that we do have leakage. So we are replacing that, and it's a good thing that we are. So just want to show you guys that, and I'll show you guys the one on the intake manifold as well. Also, there is another vacuum line that runs in right here, right behind the map sensor. Yeah, cool. So we are about ready to take the intake manifold off. We just need to remove the bolts, and then there's some stuff in the back that I'm gonna show you guys. We have the intake manifold off. I'm gonna show you guys kind of what's going on in here. So you can see the coolant is filled up in the intake manifold, or underneath the intake manifold, sorry. And you can see a lot of the residual coolant and some residual oil sitting on top of this coolant pipe. And you can see some residual oil on the back coolant pipe. No signs of it leaking. Coolant that I can see, except for maybe in that back corner by the plug, which would suck. I hope that's not it. Anyways, looking at this currently, you can see kind of the oil residue around the outside of these intakes. And that's where we're getting our oil leakage from. And also back over by the throttle body as well. So this is what we're looking at right now. This whole front side was full of coolant too, but I actually dried it up as much as I could with a rag. And yeah, I'm gonna check that back plug right here, because it does look like we have some fluid dripping on there, if that's where our coolant's coming from, and do a better inspection because it is actually daylight out. If I do end up having to replace that coolant pipe, that's fine. That one kind of sucks to get to in comparison, but we will do it. I'm just hoping not to have to do it yet. So yeah, so that's that for right now. There's a better look at all that coolant in there. And if you can see, I'm gonna flip the camera. If you can see down here where the O-rings connect, there's a lot of coolant down there. You actually almost see where the coolant is like puddled around where the O-ring seal in there too. So that's another kind of sign for me where that's coming from. But being that that's mostly from the front, that's what I'm shooting for. So I'm gonna give that a quick inspection though in the back. Another thing that I am going to point out while I am in here is, as soon as you get this intake manifold off, plug these intakes. And by plug it, I mean take one of the shop rags and make sure it's lint free or as close to, and just plug each one of those holes, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. All right, so here we are all covered up. We don't want to get anything in those intakes. That'd just be a really bad day. Fishing stuff out of a motor is absolutely zero fun. And if something does fall in there, you don't see it, could just be a little bit of debris, you know, something minuscule. You never know if you drop a bolt in there or something, and that could be the end of this motor. So we like to make sure that that is covered or plugged up as best we can. All right, let's go check out that back plug. So upon further inspection of that back coolant tree, it is leaking from what looks like from where the sensor is attached. So I do have a new coolant line coming in. I just ordered it. It is not an OEM one, or it is not a genuine one. They do not have any in stock in any of the major suppliers like Atlantic British or Lucky 8. So I had to end up ordering one from, I think it's Miami Rovers, Miami British or something. So it is a replacement, but it is not a genuine Land Rover one, which I'm not super excited about. But dollar for dollar, it was either that or spend like $350 on somebody who's price gouging one. That's probably been sitting in a box for who knows how long. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna order this one, get this one installed, and then I'm going to keep a spare one in the truck just in case it decides to fail. and yeah, call that a day. So we're at a standstill now with the truck. There's nothing that we can do until that new part comes in. So we're gonna make sure that everything's covered up, everything's plugged up, all the fuel lines and everything are covered up, and it's just gonna sit parked until I can get the new coolant line in. So it says Friday, today's Tuesday. Hoping it'll be here Thursday. You just never know, but I'm pretty doubtful. So if it doesn't come in by Friday, I won't be able to touch it till Sunday. So I'm hoping it gets here by the end of the week. Yeah, so that coolant line is going to be a little bit more of a pain in the butt to replace. I've never done one of the back ones, not that I've done this front one either, but I do know that it is a little bit more of a hassle. So I'm going to do some research on that and figure out exactly what I need, but I'm also going to wait for the new one to come in so I can see exactly where it fastens and how it attaches and all that stuff before trying to rip that one apart, because I don't want to break anything or make anything worse than it already could be. So on that note, stay tuned, and hopefully I'll have another update next week where this thing is potentially back on the road. So yeah, the joys of owning a 14-year-old Range Rover with Range Rover problems. So I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for hanging out.